I like to call him Carlo because normally the S.
Right?
Carlo.
No, he's not from France. Carlo, singular ma, Carlo.
Okay, so today.
That's your sister.
Do you want to introduce?
Yeah.
Look what I like.
I thought you was your girlfriend. More interesting.
Sal is.
I got chance.
Where's your name?
Good afternoon, everyone. So basically, today we are going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about African myths. Some myths that are, like say, people who are not in Africa, who don't know much about Africa, think of Africa, which is not true.
I'll check myself later.
So I'm much more like your myth buster. So
Cool.
relax and enjoy. Okay, so the very first, before I go ahead, I want to ask any knowledge about Africa? Think you are traveling? Why didn't you choose Africa? Choose Thailand.
Since when?
Africa, the safari.
Everywhere.
That's all.
Africa full of starvation.
Yeah,
So
okay, yeah.
nothing to eat.
Now go Africa to help.
Can I help you, right?
So basically, okay, starvation.
Safari.
That's some of the myths.
Safari.
Safari. Okay.
Safari. Desert.
Desert. Wow.
Volunteer
Volunteers.
to help.
The poor.
A lot of volunteering.
Mud pie.
Mud.
The volunteer and ride mud pie.
Change your marker pen.
Okay.
Fufu.
Skinny people.
Skinny people with big belly.
That's the one, right? That's
Big diamond. Diamond.
Yeah, blood diamond. Blood diamond.
Okay.
Blood diamond is it's a movie you wanna watch. You can watch. Kids soldier.
Kiss.
Child soldier.
Child soldiers.
Yes, yes.
Child soldiers.
Fast runners.
Fast food.
Because they run with the cheetah.
Giraffe.
Okay.
Alright.
Right.
Fast runners. Okay.
Lion King.
Lion King.
Okay, that's US.
Yes, boy. All this bigger. US.
That's the rich people, right?
Yeah. So my second question is Africa a continent or is a country?
Continent.
Continent.
Yeah, but
Country.
most often than not, people normally mistake Africa for a country. Most of the times you interact with people here and then, most of them are saying that Africa is actually
I think resolutions. Yeah.
Duplicate.
Yeah, duplicate. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, the first point we people normally mistake, and I just want to throw much more light on this: the fact that Africa is not a country. Africa is not a country. You can see the fact that people often refer to Africa as if it's a country, but rather it's a continent. And I don't know whether you've checked the world map recently, but statistics says that if you take countries like China, Europe, India, not the whole of Europe though, China, Europe, India, Japan, they cannot fit into the African continent. Africa is that big, so you can imagine. It's very, very big.
Really?
The population cannot be.
Serious? So big.
So big. And some people say that the whole US continent, you can actually
3.
Yes, it can go into Africa 3 times. Yeah, it's that big actually. You can see.
So you are from a very
True
big
size
country.
of Africa.
No, it's not.
I'm purposely one.
So basically, this is just a graphical representation of what I was saying earlier on. So you can see United States over there, taking the West African part. You can see Spain, France, Europe, Germany, Italy, taking North Africa. Then when you go to the east, you see the Eastern Europe, India. And when you come to Southern Africa, you can see China. Then Japan is taking Madagascar, which is so basically, you can see how big Africa is.
Very big.
And yeah, so I'm going straight to your points. You said that we are starving in Africa. Yeah, it's true, it's true. You interact with people and my very first experience when I interacted with someone when I came here, she said, I'm from Africa, that we even have electricity. And I was like, oh my God. Because sometimes, me for instance, before I go somewhere, before I came to Malaysia, for example, I made sure that I researched so much about Malaysia. I got to know the do's and don'ts, how much I'm going to be spending and everything. So I always like planning. So sometimes I always feel like, how come Africa, we are in a global village, so how come I know so much about a country, you don't even know anything about where I come from? It's like I'm cheating you in a way.
Some people still think we are living in trees.
Yeah, exactly. So, seriously, I need it. And sometimes you talk to someone, even people who are even doing white collar jobs, sometimes you talk to some of them and they don't even really know. So I tend to marvel. One day I went for, what was that? Was it supper with okay, supper with dinner. And Mahmoud said there's gold in Africa, that everywhere you go. Seriously.
I want some sir.
Seriously, even I'm from the Gold Coast in my country, basically in Africa, we are very rich in natural mineral resources, and gold is one of the leading. But I can tell you, you see someone from Ghana who has never been seen gold before. I was fortunate, I saw it only once. Never since then, I've not seen it again. So I was amazed when he said, in Africa, just walking there, seeing gold. I'm like, nice, it's not always like that. So basically, this is how the world map looks like. So this is Africa here. You can see how basically this representation of this part of Africa is made up of green vegetation,
Tropical.
and this part is the desert part, and this part South Africa, which most people always tend to. So Ghana is found. I'm from Ghana though, so Ghana is somewhere here.
Green.
Yeah, green, but going towards that side, the northern side is, and up here you have Tunisia, Algeria, and Libya. So basically, people from those countries, I should say, they are living in the desert. But on the other hand of the case, it's more or less like they are very rich. Like, because Libya, for example, they have lots and lots of oil. Yeah, so they are very rich. And you'll be really amazed that when you visit Libya, they grow tomatoes even in the desert.
They what?
They grow tomatoes in the desert.
Oh, how do they do that?
Mechanical fertilizer.
Greenhouses.
Yes.
Greenhouse.
And they are able to produce in large quantities.
Oh.
And even in some of these areas where you are expecting that they should be able to grow all these things, they are not even able to grow them as well as those in the desert areas are. Yep. So the second myth that Africa is a dangerous and a very violent place. Yeah. So basically your claims are not wrong, because every day, whenever you hear of Africa, is whether they are fighting or there's war here. So sometimes, the news does not actually report the good part, just the bad aspect. So with wars, revolutions, and child soldiers, as Jeffrey rightly said, making the news, it's really no wonder that the myth about Africa being the dangerous place is a common one. There are countries, some are cities, and there are borders that are dangerous. That is for sure.
So in South Africa is dangerous.
Yeah, some countries, like let's say Somalia. I will not advise them if things say she wants to. I'm not going to advise her to go and live on the Somalian beach because it's very, very risky.
Okay.
Or even in Nigeria now, right? It's Boko Haram.
Yeah, in Nigeria and
Boko Haram.
Nigeria too. Nigeria is somewhere here in the middle. Nigeria is very big. Nigeria can divide Ghana into like
northern.
So Boko Haram is just in
Boko
the
Haram.
northern part of
Northern
Nigeria.
part of Nigeria. Yeah.
So they are just terrorizing that place. And when you come to the southern part, the eastern part, there are a lot of development, oil growing, but we don't hear that. You know, people tend to spread bad news. That bad news spreads like wildfire. So basically, all the bad news that comes out always gets the tendency of being spread all around them. And violent crimes against terrorists in Africa, in all African countries, is quite real. I don't know. I was sharing with someone, but I'm pretty much sure it was someone from Flexion here. When you go to Africa and like the indigenous people get realized that I'm not even from Africa. The kind of love they show to you, you even get amazed. Because sometimes you hear stories about how women cannot walk on the streets of India and stuff like that. In Africa, you are free to walk at any time you want. And you will be surprised that you're walking on the road, someone will just rush to you. Maybe you think in your mind, maybe you have it that you think you might, but maybe he wants to help you or he wants to help you one way or the other. You might just be walking, someone will just walk to you, let me help you with your bag, maybe if it is too heavy.
Do they charge? Are you sure?
I'm very sure. That is how, yeah. They can help you at least. And older people, like, let's assume, because in our culture it's something that you must do. If I see someone who's older than me walking towards me and the person is carrying heavy load, I must. It's not an option, I must help you.
Talking about Ghana or in Africa?
No, Africa. Africa's a country.
You can easily say
Next to Somalia and Nigeria.
I will not exclude them just because of their political. So basically, someone said, I actually saw this one somewhere, that walking in Africa is much more secure than walking in Amsterdam. Yeah. When we are walking in Accra, like my country for instance, it's one of the most peaceful countries in Ghana. Botswana, it's also very safe. So there are countries that sometimes you guys should just try Africa to sometime.
Okay.
A visitor, as a visitor, you are much more likely to be killed with kindness than anything else. So you are not going to be killed with knife or guns or rather it's going to be kindness. Okay. So basically you can see this man really enjoying himself. We are and this is local and this is Africa. You can see the way she's smiling and the man is so happy. Yeah. You can see the woman, and this is actually in South Africa. We are teaching her normally when the Africans, when the foreigners come, those who take the initiative to come, they always participate in most of these things. Okay, the fourth one says Africa is always hot. Yeah, we always say that Africa is always hot. Africa is the hottest part, but I don't know, do you know that it snows in Africa? No, okay, I'm going to prove it. That's why I'm the Miss BAFTA today. So if you've only visited West Africa, where I come from, very hot. I'll not lie to you, I'm from West Africa. If you visited West Africa, I would say it would be entirely appropriate to say it's always hot in Africa. But that's not where this myth stops. It snows in Africa, yes it does. Both northern and southern Africa experience cold winters with frequent first as well as hot summers. Mountain, plateaus, cold oceans, warm. So basically what I'm trying to say here is that it's all basically if you've only visited West Africa and maybe you have the perception because it's quite hot there. It's very hot. Our weather system, we don't go with summer and those things. So it's quite hot. So maybe you visit only West Africa, then you come back with the notion that Africa is very hot. You've not even been to, so I say quarter of Africa. And all this thing is very hot because I'm going to show you a picture. This is actually snow in Africa. And this is actually in Southern Africa. Yeah.
This is Japan, right?
So basically it snows in Africa, but most people don't really know this. They just think we're in Africa and we're burning with the sun, but it's not entirely true. This is an island in Southern Africa.
What's the name?
I researched and gave it to you.
Good answer.
But this is a Europe structure?
It's actually in Southern Africa. It's in Southern Africa. So basically you can see the weather here. It's very cozy.
It may be colonized
Previously.
previously.
It may be no, but this one is actually an isolated island. It's actually isolated. I was reading about, I forgot
Honestly,
the name, but it's
Very rare to see palm, that type of palm and snow on palm.
This is the gun remover.
Okay, so Africa is filled with dangerous animals roaming freely.
Lion.
Yeah.
Animal roam free.
Yeah, because honestly speaking, I was listening to this TV host one day, Ellen DeGeneres, and she was interviewing this girl, this black girl who is now making waves in the movie industry. She's from Kenya.
Slave 12
in the
years.
12 years.
12
years.
I can't pronounce her name.
Yeah, me too. I cannot pronounce. I'm just trying. And what she said was a renowned TV talk show host, and I was amazed. She said that so in Kenya, do the elephants run into their homes, and I was like, oh, you like something. So I was amazed. I was like, oh my god, this cannot be true. But I have visited a wildlife reserve before whilst I was in Ghana, and you to be amazed that where these animals are located, it will be very difficult for you to see someone staying, because before you get there, you need to drive long, like you need to drive deep down into the bush before you see these elephants and other stuff. Most of the times, we see like tracks, maybe passing through the road, and you see an elephant or you see a tiger. It means they've gone deep down into the safari. Basically, they went there to. So, just to clear that myth, animals or wild animals are not roaming freely in our homes.
Do you keep them as pets?
Yeah, monkeys, yes.
Monkey.
Yeah. We do. So, it is true that rhinos graze just a few miles from the center of Nairobi, which is Kenya, which is East Africa's biggest city. There are golf courses in South Africa where the water hazards are home to crocodiles. Hyenas still appear in Malawi's capital city.
Hyenas is a type of wild dog.
Yeah.
Google.
But for the most part of Africa, Africa's wildlife is basically confined to a national park and reserves, including Nairobi's rhinos. So basically, when you go to all these reserves, even though they are not engulfed in a circle, or maybe they are not fenced, but they have a section or they have a portion that sometimes they don't go. You know, they are animals, so you cannot tell them not to go and not to. But the human inhabitants, where like human beings live, are so far away from where these animals are. So we are not that close to the animals. We are very, very far away from them. So elephant, giraffe, lions, and buffaloes do not roam around in towns or in the suburbs. It is not true. Basically, a picture like this, as you can see from this whole area, there is there'll be no house here. This car is actually going deep down to see some. So you can see the way the road is. Sometimes you can go more than how many miles just to see this type of animal.
Is the mountain at the back there, the peak? What's the name of the peak?
The people have been
Kilimanjaro.
Kilimanjaro. No.
So basically, this is how we see it, and we tend to misinterpret it, but it's not very true. Basically, this is how most of them are. If for instance, so this is a typical zoo. You can see it is fenced with motels inside, and you have security men on guard, those who are much more experienced with how dealing with all these wild animals. And before you go for any tour, like for instance, this car like this, there'll be like so I say 2 or 3 guards, not like some hold guns, but then they are much more experienced with how to handle wild animals when you try and stuff like that.
But they build roads to here.
Yeah, they build roads so that you're able to get this. Because if you look from this picture, definitely there is no housing limit even anywhere around.
They're not allowed to stay there.
Yeah, people are not actually allowed to stay closer. So then the 4th one, is it the 5th one? We say that all Africans are black.
Is it true?
All Africans are black.
Yeah. Is it true? That is the question.
No. You have white and South Africans.
You have white in only South Africa?
Northern
Chinese
Africa.
also.
North-
Chinese.
North Africa.
Citizenship is a lot.
Okay, but basically in Africa, when you date back to Asian histories, it was said that the whole of Africa was filled with blacks. Before the colonial masters came in and everything, Africa was filled with blacks. But after they left, I think Malaysia was also colonized by the Portuguese and stuff. So when they came in with the intermarriages, then so half caste started coming out. Then we started having people who were actually pure white. They were white-skinned people. There are actually some the most popular one. The most popular one that people always talk about is Jennifer Lopez.
Oh, she's South African then? Are you sure?
No, she's
She's African descent.
No, what I'm saying is the most popular. Someone asked me that is Jennifer Lopez from Africa?
No.
Like
She's Latin.
she traces her descent, like her ancestors back to Africa, but she's a Black American. But we've got
Charlize Theron is African.
yes, we've also got some renowned. This man, his name is quite because he's from the French side. So we're pronouncing the name, but then
But Northern Africa also has very.
yeah, Northern Africa is actually inhabited by the Arabs. So basically, they are Muslims and they are pure white. They are pure white people, not pure white. Like they're just white skinned and everything. Like Tunisia, Algeria. Those, yeah.
Okay.
So not all Africans are actually black.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So she's actually from South Africa. She just obtained the US citizen in 2007.
Now she's no longer African. Cannot wait already.
No, but she's still an African. But this one, he won Antonio Emilio, whatever his name is, better known as my Anto is a world-renowned Mozambique from Africa writer, and he's the winner of the 2014 International Prize for Literature.
He looks like a French.
So this man basically, when you read his biography, his father was a Portuguese, but he settled in Mozambique, and they gave birth to him in Mozambique. His siblings and everything were all from Mozambique. So basically, okay, that's wrong. And let me just add, we are black and we are proud. Sometimes it's actually becomes a challenge, yeah. So Africans, we are black, we are proud, and we are very strong in every aspect.
Strong. Agreed.
We are strong.
Strong.
You can see our men.
Okay, these are still lagging so much.
And we've actually got some renowned people who have impacted life internationally. We can talk about Nelson Mandela, the former US Secretary General who was actually from Ghana, Kofi Annan. So when it comes to Africa, sometimes it baffles me when someone says that he or she doesn't have that. Because I've actually spoken to a Malay girl before in my college who said she has never been heard of Africa.
Never heard of Africa.
She has never heard of the continent Africa, and I'm like, oh my god. 21st century, and you're in this world, this global village, and you don't know.
He's just trying to talk to you here.
So I guess so. Nelson Mandela, but unfortunately he passed away late last year. So I'll encourage each and every one of you, anytime you're planning another trip like Tim is doing, put Africa in mind. It's quite interesting because sometimes in Africa you see on TV, it's not really the Africa.
This is going to Thailand. Jeff is going to US.
You can imagine. Why don't you take trips to Africa? Just go and enjoy.
When you back, you will follow you.
Sure. So
Now Sal will tell you about African news.
no, that is the end of my
Thank you.